Welcome back. What a delight and an honor to have with us today Tim Wildmon. He is the president of the American Family Association. I can't say enough about AFA and the work that they do. Their website is one of the great resources in our country today, afa.net. And Tim, I just want to say to you, thank you for what you folks do there at American Family Association. Your team and the people that we have on from your organization are just top drawer. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate that, Perry, very much. We try, to keep the Christian community informed of what's going on in our culture and how they can be active and be engaged, if you will. So we're doing a good job. We appreciate you noticing.
Yeah, you guys do a wonderful job. Well, listen, you've been, you went to the meeting with the evangelical leaders with Donald Trump in New York City a couple of weeks ago. And first of all, what did you think of the meeting?
Well, it was in New York at a hotel in Times Square, the Marriott Marquis Hotel there at Times Square. And so Mr. Trump came over. I don't know how far away his Trump Tower is, a mile or two, I don't know. But he came over for the meeting, and a lot we can talk about with respect to the meeting, but it was overall, I would say it was good to get a chance to interact with him, not me personally one-on-one, but the group in a setting that wasn't a Trump fan rally. You know what I'm saying? These people who were there, I didn't vote for Donald Trump in the primary, and I doubt 90% of those people did who were there of the 1,000. So you had people looking right at him, 1,000 people who are Christian leaders who were going, we're skeptical of you. We don't know what to think of you exactly. We didn't vote for you. And for him to come to that kind of event when he's used to going to these rallies with all these thousands of adoring fans was, I say good for him on that.
All right. Well, he's going to be the nominee, and the differences between the two sides are fairly substantial. But in qualifying where he may be on some of the issues that we hold dear, what were some of the questions that came from the crowd?
Well, the questions, I didn't know exactly how this was going to happen. The people who put it together, a group called United in Purpose, they organized it, and I envisioned it being, and I think they had hoped that it would be this way, an impromptu type Q&A with him, with Donald Trump. In other words, set microphones up in the audience and people standing in line asking questions. He gives answers, something of that nature. But instead, it was everything was preset. So you had 6 people, I think, names that your listeners would recognize: Dr. James Dobson, Dr. David Jeremiah, Sammy Rodriguez, who's the evangelical Hispanic leader. You had Dr. Ronnie Floyd from the Southern Baptist Convention. These were people who asked questions. Kelly Shackelford and Tony Perkins, friends of mine. So they asked questions of Mr. Trump, but they were asking questions that were that everybody in the audience wanted to know about. What about Israel? What about your judges? What about pro-life? What about religious freedom when it conflicts with the homosexual movement? What are you going to do then and there? So these kinds of questions, which were the questions people came to New York to hear answers to, were the ones that were asked. But I want to say he knew the questions before they were asked, which I don't care really too much, because I want to know what the guy says, what his answer is, whether or not he knows what the question is going to be. But maybe that's good, because somebody can think their answer through before they give an answer. So that was kind of the setting.
A lot of people, I say a lot, those that I have read about, and some that I've talked to that were at the meeting coming away, thought, well, it was better than they expected, that he does listen, and there is a side of him that we don't see on television. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I agree with that. He comes across on television sometimes, I guess whether you're a fan of his would depend on how you would describe him on TV sometimes, especially in these debates. He has a very take charge. This is a favorable view. If you have a favorable view of Donald Trump, you're going to say he is a alpha male, take charge, no nonsense, call him like you see him, type of businessman, and that's what we need in this country. But from a Christian standpoint, and I appreciate all those attributes, I think those are good for the most part, what I've just described, but he also can be rude and crude and socially unacceptable. You remember that expression? Rude, crude, and socially unacceptable. No. But it's that New York brashness that I think turns a lot of people off, especially Christians, because we're supposed to strive for humility and meekness and love and compassion and those kinds of things. So those aren't necessarily the attributes that Donald Trump represents with his persona. So that's kind of the way but I will say this: in this meeting, he was he was more relaxed, and I think more. He didn't feel the need to project that tough guy persona as much as he does on debates or in television interviews with O'Reilly or somebody like that.
One of the other comments that I heard, Tim, and to see if you agree with this. The fact that he would meet with evangelical leaders is a plus. I mean, that really hasn't been done at that scale.
No.
Even with the Bush administration. All right, so then number two, to come out of that meeting and say, look, I want a close evangelical advisory board around me. Doesn't that give you a little hope?
Absolutely. I don't remember McCain doing that, or Romney, or George Bush. So he's the first Republican presidential candidate that I can remember that has asked for a relationship with evangelical. I saw some Catholics there too, by the way. It wasn't just evangelicals. I think it was there was ecumenical, but it was known as the meeting with the evangelical leaders. But I will say this: that's a good sign that somebody like Donald Trump. Now he knows. If you want to take a more cynical view on this, he knows he needs the votes of evangelical Christians or he loses. All right? So politically speaking, he knows that. We know that. But still, I think to his credit, he genuinely wanted to meet with us to hear what we had to say. He didn't give us the reason I can tell you it wasn't pandering, which Donald Trump's not known for, is he didn't give us all the right answers to the questions. A couple of those answers were insufficient. I would give him an insufficient grade from my point of view. But nonetheless, he met with us. He answered all the questions, whether we liked the answers or not. And I don't think it was where he was trying to trick people.
All right, the insufficiency of those answers, even though he's claimed to be a believer, Presbyterian, etc., however he frames his religious expression, doesn't those insufficiencies point to either a lack of understanding of Christian morals and values, or is it just a lack of maturity? He's still on his journey.
I think both. I wrote about this meeting and I called Donald Trump an enigma. By that I mean he's almost a contradiction. Some ways. He says in the meeting, for example, he says, talks about how his mother took him to Sunday school and church when he was a child. And he went to the Presbyterian Church of Jamaica, New York, which is in Queens. And then he says, I think we ought to get back to that again. Sunday school ought to be for everybody. Well, this is a guy who doesn't even go to church. Saying Sunday school ought to be for everybody. So I'm going. Well, he goes to church for. I think he's a Christmas Easter Christian. I think that's when he goes to church. But you see what I'm saying?
I hear you. I hear you.
That's the kind of person you're talking about. So he respects Christianity. He's going to bow his head if you pray, but he doesn't necessarily subscribe to it as a living worldview, is what I'm wanting to say.
let me take a break here. When we come back, let me kind of prime you with this question. Given what you sensed, felt, and experienced in that meeting, do you think God can use him?
Okay. You mean to answer that when we get back?
Yeah, when we get back. We'll be right back with Tim Wildmon. He is the president of the American Family Association. I think one of the most outstanding upfront organizations in the country. Go to afa.net, and it's an incredible resource, and support what they do. We'll be right back.
I'm Paulina Leiser, producer of Focus Today. Thank you for watching this video, and make sure to check our other videos at theDove.us.
Okay, we're back, and what an honor to have with us today Tim Wildmon. He is the president of the American Family Association. As you know, we have a lot of their staff members as guests here on Focus Today, and especially the relationship that we have with Mickey Addison. I don't know what she puts on her cereal in the morning, Tim, but I want some of it.
I tell you, I'm just honored you had me on after having her on. She is dynamite, man. You can see why we hired her, right?
Oh, man. What a great spokesperson. Anyway, afa.net is the website, afa.net. Now, Tim was in the meeting with a lot of other faith leaders with Donald Trump on June 21st, where they had met there in New York City. We're trying to get, we're getting his feelings as a result of that meeting. All right, so Tim, given where we are, the dynamics of where we are, a Donald Trump that doesn't seem to radiate the Christian virtues that we'd like to see, but nonetheless seems to be very sympathetic, if not strongly supportive of some of the issues that we hold dear, such as life in Israel. Given the alternative with the Democrats, we don't know if it's going to be Hillary or somebody else, all those messes over there. This is the choice. This is the one we got. Do you think God can use him?
Oh, yeah, I do. I'm hopeful for Mr. Trump, should he win, that God can use him. And what gives me encouragement is that he wants the advice, the counsel. He wants to be around these Christian leaders. And why would you want that if, in fact, you were hostile to it or to them, or you didn't want to, you thought that was a detriment? So I think, as I mentioned, I think he's a little bit of an enigma, maybe paradoxical in some ways, Mr. Trump, but I think God can use him. And on life, he says, I'm going to be pro-life. I'm going to appoint pro-life judges. And he says, I'm going to appoint judges, Supreme Court justices, for example, who believe in religious freedom and the First Amendment, Constitution. And he knows, and we know, how important the next president is in terms of the number of appointments they will have to the Supreme Court. Right. It will shape it for a generation to come. So he knows that, and I think he will be very good on judges.
Well, he's given out a list, and he says he's going to add to that. From most of the people on that list, they seem to fulfill what you just said.
No, absolutely. In fact, the Federalist Society is the group he says he will use to vet his judges through. And from everybody I know in our movement, the pro-family, conservative, Christian movement, the Federalist Society is kind of the gold standard, if you will, for rating judges. So that is extremely encouraging that he would commit to that Donald Trump would commit to that. So that's one. That's a biggie for me, at least, is what will he do with judges, particularly Supreme Court justices?
On a couple occasions, Tim, he, in fact, since your meeting, I may say this, as he begins to respond to terrorist attacks around the world, most recently in Turkey, he goes on one step further in saying, why are we tolerating people that will single out Christians and cut their heads off? That tells me he gets it.
Yeah, he does. The Islamic terrorist threat to our country and around the world, he understands, he gets it. Absolutely. He understands what's going on here, I believe, and he understands that Christians in the Middle East are under siege from ISIS in particular, but other places, even in Egypt, you're getting the Coptic Christians that are being persecuted. So But especially in the area that ISIS is, they've just been savage behavior toward the Christians and singling them out for that kind of persecution.
All right, Don, Tim, let me swing you to the other angle to that, and that is this. We Christians cannot afford to sit this one out, even though we may not like the demeanor of this candidate.
Right.
We are really, isn't it interesting, where in the past we wouldn't vote for somebody because they didn't measure up to our Christianity, even though they were a Christian,
right?
Or even a person of faith. Now we're left with this, and if we don't show up, what happens?
Well, if a liberal gets to be president of the United States again, as we have the last 7 years, going on 8, then the Supreme Court will be lost for a generation, as I mentioned, to the secular progressive movement. That will be disastrous on many levels. Also, what people don't understand is that whoever the president is can use the power of the executive branch of government to come after people. Do we know what the IRS did with the conservatives? Remember about that? Okay, we've had hearings on that. But just recently, the IRS under the executive, the Justice Department under the executive branch, the president's office I'm talking about. So the Justice Department told the schools, you remember about 2 weeks ago across the country, either you include transgendered or we're going to take your money away. That was the threat that they made.
Right.
Well, if you have a president like Donald Trump, while he may not be perfect, as we've talked about here in several ways, I'm convinced he's not going to use the power of his executive branch to come after Christians. I think if you had a Democrat in the president's office, of the ones who are out there now, they would come after Christians. So that's my opinion. And so that's a big difference between the people. Sometimes you got to go with less harm, all right? Sometimes, in my view, you got to go, who's going to do the less harm?
All right. It's been said that the 3 legs of the stool of socialism is control of the media, control of healthcare, and control of guns. And if a culture moves towards where the left wants us to go, their accomplishment would be those. Now, the one that concerns me is the media. I know that you guys are involved heavily in Christian radio broadcasting. We are in radio and television, and I can tell you that this administration is already putting the squeeze on us.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you're sensing it from your position. We certainly are sensing it here, especially as it relates to low-power television stations. In your opinion, Tim, how threatening is this?
Well, I think it could get worse because, again, if you have an administration led by a president who is hostile to conservative Christianity and views us as the enemy and will use our teaching on homosexuality, for example, as hate speech, and they will use those things, hey, we're going to come after these hate groups. We're going to shut them down. That's going to be good for America. You can see them making that kind of an argument. So I think in the name of for freedom and for hope and opportunity for us to continue to be a place that welcomes ministry, that does ministry here and around the world. I'm talking generically, like you guys and us. We need freedom. But if you start having the federal government start clamping down on us, fining us, denying us license because we're considered a hate group, for example, then that could be a reality in the next few years if we get the wrong person in the White House.
All right. So, what do you see, or do you see the faith community leaning towards Donald in spite of all of this? Do you think that he's got some more winning over to do?
Listen, you got to choose between somebody who's a bad gardener and somebody that wants to burn your house down. Now, That's the choices we got. If you want to nitpick the gardener, maybe he had a little nip of beer before he came over to do your yard, but he's not going to burn your house down. But this other person is going to burn your house down. There's no choice there. Come on, let's be sensible. Let's be reasonable. You cannot. As I said earlier, sometimes you have to consider the candidate that's going to do less harm. This isn't a church, okay? Yes, it is an institution ordained by God, but we're not electing someone to be the pastor of America where they have to have theological purity. And furthermore, we don't have that choice left. I voted for somebody in the primaries who was more doctrinally in agreement with us. But he didn't win, so he's not there anymore. So we have two choices. One, either a Democrat or a Republican are going to be president. Either Donald Trump or probably Hillary Clinton. One of those two is going to be your president. There's not a third option. There's not a third option that has a realistic chance to win. So if you want to soothe your conscience by not voting or for voting for a third party that has no chance to win, what you're saying is, I want other people to decide who the president is because I'm not going to be a part of that. I just have a real problem with that.
Well, I appreciate that, Tim, because that's spot on, as you well know. But let's think about this. In one presidential election cycle, the faith community, for the most part, stayed home because they didn't want to vote for a Mormon. And we reelected the president. Now we're faced with this option. And I'm hoping that we can get over some of this stuff, because I think you explained it very well.
Listen, okay, I'll use another analogy. We got a fork in the road. There's two choices, Democrat, Republican. One of them says potholes ahead. Okay, that's one fork in the road. The other one says landmines ahead. Okay. Which come on, and you can't just leave your car and park. You're going to have to take a road. Yeah. So I'm saying, let's be realistic about this thing and work within the system to get the best candidates, to hold people to the fire. And if one of the candidates is friendly to us, wants to know our concerns, what we say, what we believe, and the other candidate is hostile, as I mentioned earlier, who might use the office of the presidency to come after us, then I don't think there's any choice here. It's a no-brainer to me. And as I said earlier, I understand this is a God-ordained office, but this is not an office of the pastorate or a church leader where you should expect theological purity.
I find I had to be reminded, but every time God wanted to bring Israel back into alignment, he had to use a pagan king.
Well, yeah,
And so if you read Isaiah 44, when he selected Cyrus, he actually called him his anointed, even though he didn't believe, but he gave him all the tools and the power to get it done. Do you think we're in that situation?
Could very well be. I would rather have somebody who is friendly toward me, even if they don't always agree with me or act like I think they should, than somebody who hates my guts. Yeah. All right? If I can use guts on this radio station, I just did, I guess. But I think you get the idea, and then we should pray for that person. And listen, Mr. Trump, he faces an uphill climb because all the liberal media hate him, the establishment of the Republican Party hates him, the Democrats hate him, the Chinese government hates him, those who advocate for illegal immigration hate him. I mean, he doesn't have many friends out there. He is, he's trying to listen to us, and he certainly hopes that our side will vote for him in November.
Tim, you're a delight and an inspiration. I want to say again, thank you to you and your team. You guys are just absolutely the best. I can't say enough about AFA and what they do. Go to afa.net. Tim is the president of the American Family Association. Thank you for taking the lead on Target. Thank you for taking the lead on so many other things that are going on. And keep up the good work, buddy. And let's chat again before the election, okay?
Okay, Perry. Thank you. Good to be on with you.
God bless you.
Okay.